While the average temperature of the Earth increases, a couple of side effects come along with it. One of the threats across the oceans are rising sea levels, and a big area of concern stems around the fact that this is the future and it's inevitable. Some areas are experiencing sea level drop because of processes like El Niño and La Niña, which displace evaporated seawater into rainfall across land. Yet, on the other hand, coastal regions are seeing a climb in sea level numbers. With ice sheets melting rapidly, water is getting added to the oceans. Along with that, thermal expansion of seawater is also a problem, an even bigger problem to the future. When temperatures increase and salinity decreases, the volume of water increases, which also adds to rising sea levels. Now, different areas will be impacted at different rates, but in particular, India is at a high risk for coastal damage. India is susceptible because of how many regions along its coast are prone to flooding. With an increase in severity of storms for the future, storm surges would wreak havoc along the coastline. The current levels are rising by around 3 millimeters a year since 1993, but projections have increases of 30 millimeters by year 2100. That is the lower end of the scale, as there are multiple other scenarios that find 50 millimeters to 250 millimeters being possible. This is not an easy task for India to deal with, because with 1 meter increase in sea level, 20 million people would have to relocate. When looking at Bangladesh, a top 5 low coastally populated nation, sea levels have been increasing by around 5 millimeters a year, which is significantly higher than the average. The continuation of this would include a loss of wildlife habitat, an increase of storm surge flooding, tsunamis, coastal erosion, evacuation, and death of many inhabitants. However, there are some solutions. Many countries around the world have already started to look into protection, prevention, and adaptation. Ideas like floating barriers well outside the coastline, pumping stations, levees, flood walls, and even floating cities are just some of the solutions to this growing problem. Yet, with one of the fastest growing nations in the world and a high number of its civilians in poverty, only time will tell its fate.